And we're just going to have that delay that Facebook is so famous for. And I'm going to log on to my second device over here so I can be watching for all the questions with our Mighty Blaze friends, our fam.
It's amazing.
Yay. All right, and we are live. Welcome everyone to Friday Frontliner. I'm your on-air host, Sara DiVello, and I'm thrilled to host Jean Hanff Korelitz today. So welcome everyone. Let us know where you're watching from today. Jean and I were just saying, the one good part about this pandemic is that you can watch from anywhere. And we'd love to know where you're watching from as you get your questions ready. So in the meantime, I want to welcome Jean. She is the author of the novels You Should Have Known, which is now the must-watch HBO series, The Undoing, currently blazing up screens around the world, starring, of course, Nicole Kidman, Hugh Grant, and Donald Sutherland. Admission, adapted as the 2013 film of the same name, starring Tina Fey, Lily Tomlin, and Paul Rudd. The Devil and Webster, The White Rose, The Sabbath Day River, and A Jury of Her Peers, as well as a middle grade reader interference powder and a collection of poetry, The Properties of Breath. Two new novels, The Plot and The Latecomer, will be published by Celadon Books in 2021 and 2022. In collaboration with Paul Muldoon, she adapted James Joyce's The Dead as an immersive theatrical event. The Dead come in 1904. So Jean, welcome to A Mighty Blaze. We're so excited to host you.
Thank you, Sarah. And my Christmas tree would like to say hello to your Christmas tree.
Yay, we're both looking so festive. I know those who watch Mighty Mysteries with me usually on Tuesdays will notice this is a brand new look for me. I'm trying to be festive over here. So while everyone is, by the way, I just want to welcome our friends on Facebook. If you've been here before, you know how this works. And if you're new, here's how it works. This is your chance to ask Jean anything about her writing process, her books, her creativity, her very cool initiative called Book the Writer, which we're going to hear all about today. I know it always takes me a minute or two to think of my questions. So just go ahead and type them in the comments. My partner in crime, pun intended, Mark Cecil, will be managing things over there. So just go ahead and type them in the comments. We'll get those questions over to Jean. And while you are thinking of them, I am going to share just a few words of praise that this book, published as You Should Have Known, now, of course, The Undoing, earned. So the Washington Post raved that this was a flat-out, compelling psychological suspense tale, an excellent thriller rich in plot twists, teasers, red herrings, and I did not see that coming moments. In addition to suspense, the book serves up witty and pointed observations about the higher reaches of society in contemporary Manhattan. It artfully combines wit and suspense into an irresistible domestic nightmare. So Jean, let's jump in right there. How did you do that from a craft perspective? How did you build that sense of dread, that impending doom, that, all of that deliciousness that the WAPO raved about? Tell us.
Well, first of all, thank you for reminding me about that review. I had totally forgotten about that. I think like most people, good news just passes straight through your head, and it's the bad reviews that stick around forever. So I totally forgot about that. That sounds awesome. I would absolutely read a book that I made that review.
Gee, if that was me, I would have it tattooed on my body and walk around.
That just means you have a healthier relationship to praise than I do. So that means you're a healthier person. That's a good thing. But you use the word build, and that's really the answer to the question. That it's not so much about having a plot twist or a fact or even a situation in mind. You start with the situation, but to make a novel, I think that's the right word. You build and then you build and then you build. Sometimes you overbuild and you have to take stuff away. You have too much, it's clogging up the clarity of the reading experience. But the nice thing about this is you're not doing it live on stage. You're in your room, you're in your home, you're wherever you're doing your work, and you hopefully have enough time to get it right before it leaves your control. So, I mean, I began with that situation, you know, it was very much a what if situation. What if a woman whose job was to tell other people how to live their lives and sort of pronounce upon them, a woman with very clear and strong ideas about how we're supposed to behave, discovers that she is, you know, a you know, a pinup for how not to take her own advice. That kind of person, you know, that was an exciting what if to me. So that's really where it began.
I love that. So one of the things I loved the show and I loved the book. And one of the things that I loved more about the book was being inside Grace's head. So Grace Reinhardt is a therapist. And I loved how you so artfully, so painfully, so poignantly were able to capture that moment of what we're able to see for others so clearly,
Yeah.
we cannot see for ourselves.
Yeah. Yeah.
How did you do that with such insight and clarity? And I mean, it was laser sharp. It was painful, but brilliant.
It was painful to write. Yeah. Although, you know, I'm as susceptible as the next person to, you know, feeling sort of put off by somebody who seems to have it all together. You know, there's a part of all of us that really wants that person to fail, and we want to watch when it happens. So, um, you know, in her head was the only place I was interested in being, which is why, you know, for those who watch the TV series and they decide they want to read the novel, the thing that they're going to notice right away is that there's no Jonathan in the novel. I mean, clearly he's there, he's causing all of this mayhem, but he's not physically present. And that is because with every draft of this book, I removed him more and more. And I would have removed him 100%, but for plot purposes, I needed, I think it was one text message and one letter. But otherwise, he is not there. And that's because my interest was her. I really cared to follow her story as her world just gets disassembled in front of our eyes and her eyes. And what was that going to be like? And also, and we didn't really get this in the TV show, what happens next? How does she put herself back together? Because I was not willing to leave her at this absolute nadir of despair. I really wanted her to have an afterlife.
I love it. Oh, you're getting so many hearts from Facebook, so many hearts and so many likes. People love that. People love that. Laura Rossi saying, oh my God, this is so cool. Gail saying hi. Dana, Anissa, Kathy, hi, welcome everybody. Yes, exactly this, because I think, I don't know if this is just a woman thing, but I know I as a woman always do it, that when I do something and it goes wrong, or maybe I don't even do anything, I don't do anything, something happens that is painful, hard, awful, I always think I should have known. That's literally what I say, even though there is no possible conceivable way that I could have known. And so I spend a lot of time scanning the horizon for danger, right? Yeah. Waiting for something. And so I think that's the first thing a lot of us say is, I should have known, or she should have known, or whatever.
Other people's lives more clearly than our own. That there's probably some evolutionary reason for that. But in my case, I had a mom who was a therapist, and my mom shared my fascination with liars and sociopaths. She had a very upfront, up close and personal view of them, because they would come into her office all the time, and she would tell me and my sister about these patients of hers, nothing that would identify them, obviously, but she was fascinated by this juxtaposition of different truths. On one hand, these were brilliant women, and my mom would say, she went to Harvard and she's an attorney and she makes $500,000 a year and she's got 800 people working under her, and she's a genius, and she's got this partner who is stealing from her, lying to her, isolating her from her family, lying to me. It was crystal clear, but not to this brilliant woman. And so it was that kind of dichotomy of realities that I think is so interesting. And that, that was where I began with Grace.
Oh, I love that. I love that. Thank you for sharing the backstory. We love backstories here on A Mighty Blaze. It's so fascinating to see where that seed germinated, that the seed of that idea germinated from. Laura is asking, I'm just monitoring here on my second screen, how does she live with herself after, again, getting so many hearts and likes from Facebook, how does she live with herself after thinking her son might be the murderer? It's unthinkable to think your child could be pure evil. So how does the mother piece and the identity work through that horror, even if fleeting? To doubt your own child, even for a second, is brutal. Tell us about that. You're a mom.
I'm glad actually this is coming up early in our conversation, because it's a perfect opportunity to remind people that I wrote the novel, and the television show was quite different. It stayed close to the novel for the first couple of episodes, and then it went off in a different direction. And that is an example of something that did not happen in the book, so I don't have to explain. I don't have to cop to that. It is true in the book that Henry is carrying around some guilt over something that he saw and knew and kept from his mother. So that is a conversation that does happen, and that happens rather late in the book. But no, there was no murder weapon that he hid in his violent case. That's not me. Ask David E. Kelly that question.
We're going to ask David Kelly that question. But this actually brings up a really fascinating thing, because you, as a writer and also as a theater person, as someone who created an immersive theatrical production of The Dead, do you, when you're writing, do you see things very visually in your head and then write them out? And if so, well, I'll let you answer that. Well, I'll say, if so, how did you, were you overall happy with the adaptation, or would you have done it a little differently?
With the adaptation of You Should Have Known?
Yes.
I mean, I was happy from the minute David E. Kelly bought the rights. I mean, this is such a, often you hear writers say, oh, I don't care, that's all right, we care, okay? There are some writers who feel very strongly that they don't want Hollywood anywhere near their work. That's totally fine. They have that prerogative. They can step out of that sphere, and more power to them. Absolutely no problem with that. But if you are participating in this network of ideas and creativity, then you have to let go. And I learned that. I learned that with my first novel that was adapted, with Admission. I learned it watching the experiences of other friends who had their books made into good films and not so good films. You have to accept this, just as we accept that we are drawing on the work of people who came before us. I am not the first writer to write about a wife who discovers that her husband is lying to her and has cheated on her and has killed somebody. This is not an idea that I made up. We are all part of a daisy chain of ideas, and I think that's a beautiful thing, and I love being a part of that river of ideas. So the answer to your question is, I am happy with it. I mean, there were many times when I just thought, wow, like, what am I looking at here? I'll tell you, my husband and I were watching, I think it was episode 4 or 5, and he said to me, was the lawyer like that in your book? And I said, there was no lawyer in my book. There was no trial in my book. There was no Jonathan in my book. But we forget, because we were all so caught up in this great show. I mean, I was caught up.
Well, thank you so much for sharing that. Laura says, thank you, Jean. She said, she will be excited to read the book because she just bought it.
Amy's
saying, this is so great. I'm glued to every word. Thank you, everybody, for watching and sharing. And any questions that you have, just go ahead and keep them coming. Type them right there. Meanwhile, I want to get back to the New York Times review of You Should Have Known talked about your ability to write, quote, the subtle class distinctions and self-justifications of the moneyed world that Grace inhabits. whilst I was reading the book, that was actually one of my many favorite parts. Your ability to hone in on this one thing of the many possibilities of things that differentiate people, that differentiate socioeconomic classes and identities and all of these things. But you would hone in on this one thing that would so efficiently, so exactingly cut straight to the heart of the issue with this laser-like precision to reveal what I felt was the heart of the issue. So one thing, for instance, was in your book, Grace is noticing that the other moms at Reardon are, oftentimes surgically altered, with the facelifts and the Botox and, toning and tightening and aerobicizing their bodies. And
sure, they do a lot of yoga too.
Right, exactly. Probably not the kind of very gentle yoga that I teach, but they're probably power yogaing it up. But Malaga does not, and that's one. And you sort of hone in on that difference, and I love that.
Is it really sets her apart? But I mean, the first of all, thank you for noticing that, and that is another huge difference between the book and the. I mean, we all love watching stories with incredibly rich people behaving badly. But another major difference between the TV show and the book is that in the book, they're really not that rich. In fact, they are just comfortable among insanely wealthy people. And that is something, that's another really important element of this book since you like the backstories, it began with an article I read many years ago in New York Magazine. You'd think I would remember the name of this writer. It was such an important article to me, but she wrote about growing up in New York and still living in New York and gradually becoming aware of how, poor she was. And we're not talking about poor on a global scale here. We're talking about the slipping of socioeconomic strata that are so clear to anybody who lives in this New York City. And at the time that I wrote the book, I was still living in Princeton, New Jersey, where my husband teaches. We hadn't yet moved back to New York, but my sister had her twins in the school that we had attended, that she and I had attended, which was a private school, but a very kind of lefty, crunchy granola. It originated in the 19th century to educate the children of workers. I mean, we grew up singing Pete Seeger folk songs and, spirituals. And it was a very lefty, commie kind of place. And in the decades between our attendance and her kids attending the school, it was as if it was just taken over by so much money, so that on one hand, she was, an alumna, and she was privileged that she, was able to get her kids in, but suddenly their classmates were not the kind of Sesame Street vision of tomorrow that we had grown up with, but her kids would come home and say, oh, I can't have a play date with Jim on Saturday because they're going to Yale for the weekend. They're taking their private jet. So she was sort of in despair about this, and we talked about it a lot. So on one hand, in the novel, you have Grace actually living in the apartment that she grew up in because it was given to her. Could she ever have afforded that apartment today? No. She's sending her kids to the school that she went to because she probably had an in, because she was a graduate of the school. But she is fully aware that as a therapist, married to a doctor, she's on the poor end of the scale in this school. So it was that I wanted to write about as well. That all went when it was in the adaptation. So.
Yeah. And in the book, I liked how you described Reardon as when Grace is reflecting on her time there, in the 70s. She was saying it was, almost socialist.
Yeah.
And now all of Henry's classmates are the kids of private equity and hedge fund managers, and they're all money guys, and how very different it was then, and the history of it being even in the 1800s, as you said, for the children of immigrants and
Yeah, I did base Spirited on my old school, which, to be completely honest, when we moved back to the city, my son also went to school there. So I do know whereof I speak. But
yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, and I loved that because, again, as someone who neither lives in New York nor has kids, I was so fascinated by these interdynamics of this private school life that I know nothing about, but you described it so, again, what I think was really amazing for me as a reader was to see how you honed in on those differences. Because as a writer, I'm always thinking to myself, what is the one you could talk about the building, you could talk about the street, you could talk about the clothes, you could talk about where they go on vacation. You could talk about a lot of different things to illustrate that differential. But the way that the choices that you ultimately made to show that were so efficient. And so I just was wondering, as a writer, how did you choose, like, how did you decide what to hone in on?
As a writer, that you begin with an idea, but without too much of an idea. I mean, I never tried to break it down into a percentage, but let me try to do that right now. So you start with this idea. You don't really know who these characters are. You don't know what they look like. You don't know what their family of origin was like. You don't know what their taste in clothing is. To talk about something that became very important in the TV show. But as you kind of walk in their footsteps, you begin to know them better. And then it really becomes a question of, listening to them or just paying attention as you see how they react to things. In my view, if you know too much about what's going to happen, every detail, you've kind of messed yourself up, because then all that happens is you're connecting the dots on the page, and that kind of inert feeling, that rote feeling, you can tell when you're reading a book that this is going to happen, then this is going to happen, and this is going to happen, and there's no sense of kind of discovery and surprise. And it doesn't matter how great the plot is, and usually the plot's not that great because there aren't that many new and surprising plots at all. It's really about the people. It's not going to be a book that you're going to enjoy reading. So you always, you want to start when you have that sort of thrust of the what if question, an idea of who the people are, but you don't know everything that's going to happen. That's something you find out along the way.
Oh, I love that. I love that balance.
Yeah.
That you're talking about.
People think, oh, I can't write chapter 1 until I know every single detail that's going to happen. To me, that's a real mistake. Don't do it. Don't wait for that. Because then you'll just be, you'll be writing from an outline, and I can tell.
Yeah, right. So you feel that lack of organic flow of being willing to go where the characters want to lead you.
And you think, well, I'll never solve these big problems. So, I don't even know who gets killed or, what the big twists are. You will, as you write it, it will come, and you have to kind of have that faith. It's terrifying. I'm not going to say it's not terrifying. It's terrifying to begin a project that may take 3 years of your life and not know what happens, but don't wait.
What about, do they ever lead you into a place where you're flowing along, you're following them, and oops, it's a dead end. You got to back on up out of there.
A version of that happened with this book that I've just finished, where there was a lot of kind of push with this book. It was very propulsive. And I ran into some trouble in the middle. It was a timing thing. Things were not happening in the right order. It felt draggy, and I had to unravel it and go back. And that's very painful. You hate doing it, but it's necessary. It's like you can't build over a sand pit. You gotta fix it. So that took about 6 weeks of kind of rewinding and making it better. So yeah, it does happen. And you pray, like, God, am I making this a 6 foot tall man when it's a 4'11" female, that's just a bad example, but you don't know. It's part of the risk. It's part of the terror. Part of
Exactly.
what we do.
I love that. I love that. Just reading some of the comments. Laura saying it felt vicious under the surface, the way they interacted. I totally agree. The dynamic between the women, and I thought you captured that so well, because women, let's be honest, can be vicious. We've all been on the receiving end of that. And I thought you captured that so well. Laura saying she wishes there was a sequel. I can't stop thinking of these characters, even though.
Well, the sequel is the second half of the book. So, I mean, one of the nice things about the book is that, Grace loses a lot of friends, but she regains a friend in the book, and a friend who really Jonathan pretty much separated her from. So there is hope. I mean, when you have to suddenly remove from your life everything that isn't true, at least you build back, you build back better, as our new president says.
Yes, exactly. We've got to build back better and not be afraid to walk away from what's not working. I love that.
A lot of respect for Grace. We don't see this in the TV show because it really ends where it ends, but around this house, especially at this time of year, it's no secret that one of my favorite stories ever is Christmas Carol, and that's not because of the ghosts. It's not because God rest you merry gentlemen. It's because of Scrooge. It's because he's so brave. He is brave enough to start his life again, to have humility, to have recognition of how he's destroyed his own life, and to start again. I mean, it's a really powerful, beautiful thing, and I can watch it over and over. The Mr. Magoo version, the Muppet version, the Albert Finney version. I watch them all because I just love seeing that happen every time.
Oh wow, Jen, you're totally changing my
I mean, the ghosts are great too. I love the ghosts too, but it's about his courage. Yeah.
You're so right. All this time, every time I've watched it, I always sort of shrink from his unkindness.
Yeah.
And I'm always like, don't hurt Bob Cratchit. Don't hurt, don't be mean. Don't be unkind. But you're right. It is
to watch. It's not just everybody else who gets to have a better life because Scrooge has had this experience. He gets to have a better life. He gets pleasure. He gets food. He gets women. He gets all the pleasure that he's denied himself.
Right.
He gets that too. It's just anyway.
You're changing my whole perspective, Jean. I love this. My mind is exploding with new possibilities. Thank you. Amy saying, I love knowing it will come. Going back to your writing process. She said, thank you for that reminder. Amy is my dear friend and fellow writer. She's coming on the show in February. So you are giving the writers among us hope. Laura saying she is obsessed. Thank you so much for all of that. Thank you guys for watching. Thank you for being with us. This is so great. So let's talk, Kirkus, the notoriously, I think the New York Times called them reliably, curmudgeonly. Kirkus called the book a smart, leisurely study of midlife angst.
Jason, thank you for reminding me of all this stuff. This is so nice. I literally, remember this book came out in like 2014. Yeah. So.
I am here to amplify you and remind you just how great you are, because you are great. You're amazing.
Okay, go ahead.
And so Kirkus, reliably curmudgeonly, notoriously cranky Kirkus, called the book a smart, leisurely study of midlife angst. Jason Bourne meets Martha Stewart, but not quite. I laughed. I love that. They went on to say, Korelitz writes with clarity and an unusual sense of completeness. She doesn't over-describe, but neither does she let much of anything go by without observing it. She is an ascended master of the psychologically fraught situation.
Cool.
I totally agree with that.
You'd never know that from reading my Amazon reviews. We should not do, but I think the flip side of that lovely accolade is people saying too much detail. I get that complaint a lot. I mean, this has always been true. There've always been, a lot of people who just don't like the way I write, and that is fine. I just want to tell those people, just please don't read anything else that I write.
Exactly. And you know what? Well, first of all, I just want to say that the self-appointed critics on Amazon are, of course, and Goodreads, that place is vicious, are of course welcome to their own opinion.
Absolutely.
And welcome not to read the book. And I want to go back.
I'm begging them, don't read anything else that I write. It's going to be a bad experience for you, and not so great for me either. So.
It's not going to be good for either of us. Let's just skip it, move it right along.
Let's just be friends.
Let's just be friends. Exactly. But I do want to just say that well, first of all, I want to go back to something that you said earlier, which is that we remember the bad reviews first. And I just want to say, in spite of my humble suggestion that you get these amazing reviews tattooed on yourself and walk around shimmying them around, of course I remember the bad ones worse. I still remember the bad and unkind ones the most. So I just want to be, I feel like I just have to confess that, because I want to be honest too. I am not the person who has yet ascended to only remembering the good ones. Maybe someday.
Or not reading them. I mean, that would be a good thing too. But.
Yeah, exactly. But here you are getting this rave review from Notoriously Cranky Kirkus. That don't come cheap. You have earned that. So tell us, Ascended Master, how do you write, this psychologically fraught? Because I think when I was reading the book, I was sweating, Jean. I was sweating because I was like, I knew the sense of, I had this sense of impending doom. How do you create this so effectively, that psychologically fraught tension?
I think, gosh, I wish I had a really pithy answer for you. I think if you're writing about something that really fascinates you, you're kind of halfway there. If you're writing, Mr. Mustard, Colonel Mustard killed somebody with the mug of tea in the library, that's probably not going to feel very immediate to you. But I can imagine myself being a Grace. I can imagine the novel that I wrote after You Should Have Known was about this feminist scholar at a New England college who kind of somehow, through no fault of her own, becomes the president of the college, and she's presiding over this liberal college, and she feels really, this is great, and I'm a feminist, and it's all progressive here, and then something happens on the campus, and she is the man. I mean, she's the college president. She's been attacked all over the place. She has to, she has this incredible conflict between her principals. In her mind, she's out there protesting with the students, but she's also the president. Her daughter's a student at the college, and she's out there, it's a disaster for her. So, I mean, these are the kind of pressure points in our lives where our principles come into conflict with, our jobs. Maybe we're not quite ideologically the people we were 20 years ago, or, maybe our politics have drifted a little bit as we've gotten older. Maybe we've changed and we haven't admitted it to ourselves. I mean, there are all sorts of ways you can go with a problem like that. So I guess I'm just drawn to the problem and then thinking my way through the problem. And of course, in that book, there are lots of twists and things that happen as well. But actually nobody read that book. So it's, we should always remember that I may have been around for a long time, but I've been really quite invisible as a writer for a long, long time. So you're asking me what this is like. This is great. I mean, I'm thrilled that you want to talk about my work. But for those of us who are writers, we know that, it is absolutely a normal experience to walk into an enormous bookstore and be not present, be not there at all. Not a single one of our books. And that's, so, after a career of that, I mean, this is absolutely lovely.
Yeah.
But, so, I mean, I think I decided a long time ago that as much as I would love to be widely read and known, I was lucky to be still publishing. I was lucky that I kept finding a publisher who was willing to overlook my terrible sales record and take a chance on the next book. And that really the only thing I could control was how good the book was. And that just had to be my job. And that's, how I've gone forward. So
I love that. The only thing I can control is how good this book is.
You can't control, if
it's so true.
Are they gonna, we all know that every publisher has a limited amount of publisher fairy dust. They usually sprinkle it over 1 or 2 books at a time, and it's almost always not going to be your book. And, you just have to make your peace with that, because it's going to drive you crazy otherwise.
Yes. Oh, Jean, thank you. Mara is saying the series is very good, but the book is so much better. Amy's saying, I absolutely love how honest Jean is. Laura's saying, Sarah, you always do your homework. That's true.
These are great questions.
I'm a geek. I'm a nerd who likes to do her homework. Mark says, question, does Jean try to create certain emotions in her work? Are there certain feelings she enjoys trying to create in her readers? Great question, Mark. Tell us.
Well, fear, loathing, and dread. Those are the fun ones for me. There's certainly, they may not be fun to experience as you're reading them, but they're lots of fun to create. So, yeah, I'm not good at like scary stuff. Like my son made me watch a horror movie last night, and I just did the whole thing. It's just like, I'm doing this for you because you're making me do this. I don't enjoy ghosts and scary things, but dread over something that is coming that you suspect you caused, I think is a pretty exciting place to be.
That is an exciting place to be. And you did it so well, because as I was reading, I kept thinking, you're just giving yourself too much rope to hang yourself. don't do it, Grace. Every time she was issuing advice, and talking about how other women should have known. Yeah. So I love what you said, though, that you think perhaps, I just want to make sure I understood you correctly, that perhaps the scariest thing is knowing that something bad is coming that you yourself contributed to making happen. Is that what you say is that a key, or perhaps the most important key to creating psychological suspense?
I'm not sure you create it. I think you let it out. I think if you're a person like me, you're walking around with lots of fear and anxiety and guilt, preemptive guilt. So did I cause this? Did I make this happen?
Yes.
So it's kind of finding the vein and starting to dig, I guess.
Yes.
But, I was going to say something super clever and I've totally forgotten what it is. Oh, well, if we keep talking, we'll
pause because I also struggle with anxiety and a lot of worries and fears, and I'm feeling guilty oftentimes, even when I've done nothing. I'm like, oh no, was it my fault?
Really. And I think as far as this character, once the secrets start coming up, bubbling up, she's not a stupid woman. Everything that we see in those early chapters of the book, with every revelation, she's not ignorant. She knows. She's just throwing up barrier after barrier, just maybe this, maybe this, maybe this. But
because, and I love that you do that. You talk about this desire to unknow, to not know. And I have seen that in myself so many times. And going back to what Amy so cleverly, so rightly pointed out, that it's your honesty. You're so honest about that. We've all done that, where we do know and we went to not know because it's the harder work of knowing and doing something about it.
What I was going to say before, I think this is not all of us are writers, but we are all fiction creators. If we're confronted with something really uncomfortable, something that we really don't want to be true, we create. Okay, here's an example. We're in the middle of
I'm leaning in for the example, Jean.
Okay. There's a pandemic going on, right? Maybe you've heard about it.
Yes.
A year ago, literally a year ago, in the middle of December, you can't see my couch, but here's a couch. I was on that couch, terrified about this pandemic. I have read enough books about, epidemics and pandemics that when I heard the word virus and the word China in the same sentence, I was terrified. Um, as you may know, all pandemics have historically come out of Asia. There was no reason that this one that I was starting to read about last December could not get to this house and the house of everyone I cared about and the house of everybody else. And I was absolutely terrified. Did I want that to be true? No. I would have run around the planet on one foot to make it not true. I would have given every bit of my creativity to have created an alternate reality in which it was not true. And that has certainly been going on all over the world, especially in this country, among other people who also do not want it to be true, but it is true. So, our human need to feel safe and comfortable when faced with something really scary, whether it's a noise behind us as we're walking down the street, or news about a scary new virus in China, or somebody coming up to us at a party and saying, your fiance used to be engaged to a friend of mine and he stole all her money and disappeared. These are all things our brains will leap to our aid, misguided or not, and bombard us with an alternate version of these events. She's crazy. It was his bad upbringing. That coworker is jealous of him. There's not really a virus. It was made up in a movie theater and George Soros is behind whatever it is.
Right.
We have a human need to make something uncomfortable into something that we can dismiss. And that is what grace does. And that is what people are doing all around us. And once you are aware of that, you see it everywhere. And I don't choose to see that as an evil, terrible thing. I feel like it's almost a self-comforting survival element until it actually interferes with our survival.
Thank you for crystallizing that and tying it to something that we can all relate to, that is so timely, that is so present and so scary right now. You're so right.
Invent this. This is, Gavin de Becker wrote a book called The Gift of Fear. And he's like a security consultant. And he starts this book by analyzing an actual crime where, a guy enters a lobby behind a woman in an apartment building. He gets in the elevator with her, and the whole way up the elevator with this guy who's going to rape her, she's saying, oh, he's delivering food. Oh, he must be visiting my neighbor upstairs. Fiction after fiction after fiction to make this scary situation not scary. And that's why he talks about the gift of fear. You're being given this very unpleasant emotion. Fear is physical. It feels awful, but it's there to help us.
Yes, exactly. Amy saying, yes, minimizing is a trauma response. Amy's a New York-based energy therapist who works with a lot of trauma, helping people, has written books about it, coming through that. This is so true. Yeah. And it's so interesting because I've always wondered how, why I hadn't tied Grace's, mental gymnastics to something that we're all doing right now.
It comes out most clearly in the chapter. So funny, I was able to see the scripts of The Undoing, and I noticed that even though David E. Kelley had, departed the story, much of my novel ended up in his stage directions. And there's a scene where Grace is talking to the two detectives, and this is where she finally admits to herself that it's Jonathan. And it's fairly early on in the book. But she puts up such a fight. I mean, she fights against everything that they tell her, and she visualizes herself in a kind of a net of of strings or ropes holding her up, and with every revelation they're going snip, 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 snip. And he actually put that in the stage direction. I think he even called no, he didn't end up calling that chapter Snip Snip, but he definitely used that image. I thought, wow, I really got into David E. Kelley's head.
You sure did. You sure did. And in all of our heads, Publishers Weekly awarded it a starred review and a PW pick, raving about the book. This excellent literary mystery unfolds with authentic detail in a rarefied contemporary Manhattan, an intriguing and beautiful book, which it most certainly is.
So nice. I should fill on my good reviews more.
Jean, every day I can call you and just read them to you. Or I could just, text you a little highlight. Just be like, good morning, Jean. An intriguing and beautiful book you wrote. I want to talk about another, because you have done so many cool things. You have written these books. One has become a movie, again, with Tina Fey, Paul Rudd, Lily Tomlin, which is in 13, Admission, the book of the same name. You have done an immersive theatrical production. You also founded an initiative called Book the Writer. Tell us about that.
Yeah, so Book the Writer began when I was living in New Jersey. I had this thing called the Meet the Author Book Club, and I ran it as to benefit a charity I was on the board of. And people paid to be in the book group, and then the authors would come at every meeting, and we would have these wonderful conversations. And I didn't pay the authors, but I said to them, we're going to sell 20 copies of your book, which again, for most of us is a very big deal. So yes. When I moved back to New York, I thought, I'm going to see if this can work as a business. And it evolved, went through a few kind of stages, but it evolved into something that we call pop-up book groups, because it's not like being in a book club where you have to go to every meeting, even if the book sounds really bad. We come out with a list twice a year. And in fact, the winter spring list is coming out tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. We have a priority list of people who have already attended our book groups, and they've had a pre-registration period for the last week. But tomorrow at 9 a.m., we open to the public, and we've got, I think, 16 events. And we're online now. So the nice thing is that, in normal times, we're doing this in New York City apartments, but now you can be anywhere. This will continue through the summer. And then I hope by the fall, we will be back to real apartments. But again, like we were saying before, this has been such a kind of revelation about having people join us from everywhere that I think we might retain some form of maybe we'll do a few events a year that are online so people can join us. But can I tell you who's coming?
Yes, we're dying to know.
Let's see, I actually have a sticky. So, all right.
Yay.
So we have, this one's sold out, so I feel badly starting with it, but Britt Bennett, The Vanishing Half.
Oh yeah, she just made Barack Obama's top favorite books.
In the fall, we had Raven Leilani, also on that book. A memoir called Long Live the Tribe of Fatherless Girls with T. Kira Madden. We have Madeline Miller's Circe. We have Congressman Eric Swalwell talking about his, and when I say talking about, we'll be talking to him. These are conversations, talking about his book about Trump's impeachment. Bess Kalb's memoir, Nobody Will Tell You This But Me. Sophie Ward, who's an English actress and novelist. Her first novel was longlisted for the Booker Prize, so we're gonna have her. Gabriel Byrne, the Irish actor, that's sold out, sorry. Lily King, Writers and Lovers. Talia Lavin, who posed as a white supremacist. She's a Jewish woman. She posed as a white supremacist man online, wrote this book called Culture Warriors. Joanna Rakoff, your fellow Bostonian, who made My Salinger Year, which is about to be a movie. David Duchovny, the actor, has a new novel. We have Bill Buford writing about being a chef, and I'm just skipping, Paula McLean, who wrote The Paris Wife, and Natasha Trethewey, our former poet laureate, her memoir, Memorial Drive, and there are a few others. I haven't said them all, but if anybody wants to get the email tomorrow with all the links, just go to, maybe you can put this in the chat box. I don't know if I can.
Yes. Oh no, Mark will take, my partner in crime, Mark will be taking care of this. Book the Writer.
Book the Writer, one word, and just join the mailing list. And tomorrow at 9 a.m., you'll get all the links.
Yay. So we'll be dropping that in the comments here on Facebook. Mark is taking care of everything for me. Thank you again, Mark. Book the Writer. So we will all be joining that list we're getting thumbs up and hearts because that's an amazing initiative that you started. That's really, really cool. And your lineup is amazing. And I think it would be great. It doesn't take much to just set up a computer in the room and people can be live streaming it and in person. And that way you can have even more people.
I think the live streaming is a bit above my pay grade. I don't think I'd be able to figure out how to do that.
I'll come help you. I will selflessly volunteer.
All right,
I've gotten quite good at the girl who was very scared to be on video for the last 43 years has now become very used to being on video. So I'll do it for you, Jean.
You seem very comfortable. I think we're all getting more comfortable with it.
Yes, we've had to. Jennifer saying these conversations are the best. Thank you so much. Book the Writer. Yay! Check it out, Jennifer and everybody. So we have just a few minutes left here with Jean, and I want to just make sure that we talk about your practice as a writer. So, okay. Jean, walk us through it. Do you rise with the sun? Do you flow effortlessly to your desk? Do the words just pour out of you? Or are you are you Hemingway, like clawing your way through and just pounding the booze? What's it look like over there?
It looks pretty lazy a lot of the time. And then there are these, incredibly intense periods where I'm just working all the time. And I was really lucky in the context of a very, very bad time that just before the pandemic began, I had this idea and I sold this book. I sold this idea. Well, actually, I'll tell you how it all happened because it's a really weird story. I'd been working on this other book for about 2 years, and it was a really big book, not a suspense book at all, and it just wasn't working. And my editor kept saying to me, "It's going to be great. I can't wait to publish it. Write another draft." And this happened in January, and I was already, as I have said,
You were on the couch.
I was on the couch. Things were not good. I was in her office, and she was telling me she wasn't buying my book yet. I had to write another draft, and I was just exhausted because I was out of ideas. I had nothing, and I never wanted to look at this book again. And I found myself telling her about this other idea that I had, and I knew it was a good idea. There are some ideas that come to you, and you're just like, yeah, that's the one. Actually, the last time I felt this way, it was You Should Have Known. And I'm telling her this story, and I can see her getting more and more excited, and that was very gratifying. And then the next day, my agent called me, and she said, "What happened in that meeting? You went in unable to sell a book, and you walked out with a 2-book deal." And I'm just like, I don't know what happened. But my beloved editor understood better than I did what had to be done. And what had to be done was I had to put aside the big book that wasn't working and write this new book, which I have the galley now. It's called The Plot. You can guess that it's very plot driven. And there we were at the beginning of the pandemic with me in this house, very motivated not to be paying attention to what was going on in the world. Obviously my family and friends, but and all I did was write for every day for 5 or 6 months, and I finished the book. And I've never done that before, and I really hope I never do that again because it would probably take another pandemic. But the stars aligned for this particular project. So if you happen to be observing my process in those 6 months, you would have seen an extremely hardworking person. But outside of those periods, I'm going for a walk, I'm taking the dog for a walk, I'm gabbing with my friends, I'm going to ballet class, I'm watching too much TV, just what we're all doing. Because it takes time for these ideas to bubble up and start kind of bothering you enough to write them down.
Yes. Oh, that's such a good description. So I just want to remind everyone that The Plot, which is already getting incredible reviews, is out May 21st, 2021. So this May, 5 months from now, and our blazing co-host Caroline Levitt will be hosting Jean on May 14th, 1 week before the book comes out, on this very show to talk about this book. This book, you guys, is getting the most incredible reviews. It is just burning up Twitter. It is burning up all the sites. So you have to read this book. Mark just dropped the link in the comments to our very special partnership with bookshop.org. So you can pre-order this book today, and you can support independent bookstores, which is what bookshop.org does. So again, it's right there in the links. Mark taking care of that. Thank you, Mark. Thank you, Mark. Amy says, this has been amazing. Thank you, in capitals. Amy, thank you for joining us. And she said, Jean, how do you deal with the bad writing days and writer's block? Do you stick it out or get up and take a break? I know I, for one, would very much like to know the answer to that.
All right. Well, I don't know if you're going to like this answer. I may have to go to writer jail after I say this, but I don't think writer's block is a real thing. I think, there are some days you feel like writing, and there are some days you don't feel like writing. And I don't think we need to formalize it with the disease. I don't think, there have been many, many days when I didn't feel like writing and I didn't write. But I have never described myself as having a writer's block. I think, just don't be so hard on yourself. Go take a walk. I sometimes get good ideas the first thing in the morning when I wake up. But there have been novels that I've written that I thought about for 20 years before I wrote the first word. And I think that's okay. So don't be so hard on yourself. If it's a great writing day and you don't have to do anything, cancel everything and write all day. And if the next day you don't feel that way, don't beat yourself up about it. So I'm sorry. I know people talk about this thing as if it's like eczema or some other syndrome, but I don't know that it's real. I think we might have made it up.
All right, everybody, you heard it here on A Mighty Blaze. Writer's block is not like eczema. It is not a condition. We may have made it up. Give yourself a break. Give yourself a break. I love that.
And go do something else.
Go do something else. Yeah, because it's so great to get your perspective on that, because I have hosted Dean Koontz on the show, and he said he is in the seat from 7:30 a.m. He has, I think he said I can't remember now. He told us what he eats. It was amazing. It was like 2 eggs, 1 slice of cheese, no carbs. He sits down at 7:30 and he does not let himself get up out of the seat until 5. So if he is not writing, he just makes himself sit there and keep pushing through. Yeah. And so there's, and we've all heard from him and from so many other deeply respected, incredibly prolific writers, do you push through, or are you just sort of, torturing yourself and teaching your body that writing is painful and miserable and hard? And so thank you. And who wants to do that?
This earlier, I know another writer who says, I don't like writing, I like having written. So that's, I know a lot of writers, and I think I only know one of them who just lives to write. She wants to write all day long. You have to make her leave. Good for her. I'm thrilled for her. She's written some great books. I
hate her.
Yeah. But I could never be that person. That's just not how it works for me. And the weird thing is, because I feel so lazy sometimes, if I haven't written for months, and then I suddenly remember, oh my gosh, I've written 8 novels. And that's not including the ones that weren't published. How did that all happen if I'm so lazy, But that's how it feels sometimes.
Yes, exactly. And I do that too. I beat myself up. I'm 6.5 years into writing book number 2, still not done. And I beat myself up a lot. Why aren't I faster? Why aren't I better? Why aren't I working more productively?
I hate to say this, but you don't hear a lot of male writers talking about this. Yes. It's all the women, it's just another way to punish ourselves. I don't know why we do it. Hemingway did not beat himself up if he didn't write if he went fishing to catch a marlin or go shoot something or whatever. Sorry, I shouldn't say that, but what he did a lot of stuff that did not involve writing his books. I don't think he beat himself up about the days.
No, sure didn't beat himself
I
up. I love that.
Not do that anymore. That would be
really Let's not do that anymore. Amy saying yes, no writer jail for Eugene.
Thank you.
She said, I appreciate that so much. Anne Lamont says there's no writer's block. It's emptiness. We need to go fill up to write. Oh, Amy, I love that. Thank you for sharing that. Amy, my best friend and another amazing writer, is coming on the show in February. She's an energy therapist and healed herself from chronic long-term Lyme disease. Now she teaches others how to do that. She's amazing. So we'll be solving the mystery of why we feel like shit and feeling better in February. That's the name of her new book, which I absolutely love. And Gail saying, thank you, Sarah. Particularly great conversation today. Happy holidays to Eugene and A Mighty Blaze. Happy holidays to you, Gail. Gail's one of our top community members. Thank you so much. We have one more question, which actually was submitted ahead of time by Dr. Marsha Bactencia Croyle. It feels like an especially important week to honor women's honorifics and doctorates. And she was wondering if you could talk about the differences, which we have covered a lot of, but I just want to put it out to you because she did submit her question early. The differences between the book and the series. So there were so many there. I mean, we could go to, there was a lake house instead of a beach house. There was no trial. Elena's name was Malaga.
Yeah.
What do you?
I mean, I think that the biggest differences were the money. I mean, these people were really, really, really rich, whereas in the book they're not, and it's an issue for them. In the book, all the characters are Jewish, and they're not in the TV show, which is something that I've discussed at length. I went on Sarah Silverman's podcast, and we talked about this, which was really interesting. But
yeah, I saw that on your website.
Yeah. But that wasn't a problem for me. None of it was a problem for me. I know why it happened. It wasn't a big deal. What else? Well, obviously, Jonathan. I mean, Kelly said to me, the Jonathan character is going to be very important. And I said, great. Then I found out that they cast Hugh Grant. And I'm like, yeah, it's going to be a big part. You don't cast Hugh Grant for a guy who just wanders through the scene a few times. I knew all that. The other thing is that after episode 2, it really goes in a different direction. And there were episodes later in the series that literally had 2 or 3 things that had come out of my book, and the rest was purely David. So you just think of it as a variation on a theme. I mean, like I said, I'm responsible for the book. I'm not responsible for anything you saw on the screen. Especially in the later chapters. There was no Haley Fitzpatrick.
Right.
I loved her.
I loved her. I
picked her up, so take no credit for her.
Okay, excellent. Well, thank you, Dr. Marsha Croyle, for that.
Thank you for your doctorate, Dr. Marsha.
Dr. Marsha.
You worked very hard for that doctorate, and I respect it.
Yes, exactly, Dr. Marsha. Thank you for that. We all respect your wonderful work. So Jean, I think we're out of time here, but I just want to say, let's close with a question. What do you want people to leave your books, having felt, having experienced, having learned? What do you want us to feel?
Wow, what a great question. I've never asked myself that question. I guess I would hope that they leave with some of my love for language, because that's a really important thing for me, that that everything that I write elevates language and honors and respects language. I think maybe just a closer look, or more of a feeling for how complex our lives are, the conflict between our principles and our realities and our behavior, maybe our bad behavior, and the ways we change as we go through our lives. From a practical standpoint, I'd love for them to come away thinking, wow, I've never heard of this writer before. Oh, wow, she's got 5 other novels I've never heard of. Maybe I should read one of those too. That would be great.
We should read them all. And actually, Jean, you offer a really cool opportunity on your website where you will, if you have the stock, sign and send. Is that still
Yeah,
happening?
that's been there for years, and nobody ever nobody ever emailed me about it until about 3 weeks ago. So, I mean, it's not a big deal, but I actually did just get in paperbacks from England, with Nicole Kidman on the cover. Everybody wanted that, and I didn't have that until a few days ago. But it's so funny. Like I just put it up there because I have all this boxes and boxes of old books, and I thought, no, I'll just see if anybody wants it. And like nobody ever asked until about 3 weeks ago.
Well, I will be emailing you right after this because I'm asking. That's amazing. Amy's saying she's going to order them too. All right, everybody. So this is Mark is going to post the link to the website. To Jean's website where you can get signed, personalized copies of all of her books, which is such an incredible holiday gift, New Year's gift to yourself, birthday gift. So
I love that, but sure.
Amazing. Who doesn't want that? So thank you so much. And actually, I'm sorry, I just forgot one other thing that I just remembered one other thing I really wanted to ask you. When I invited you on the show, you said, I've never thought of myself as a mystery writer.
True.
Tell us, having earned this praise from Kirkus, from Publishers Weekly, from the New York Times, the Washington Post, I could go on and on. Again, calling you, my God, I mean, where do I even start? That you are an ascendant master of suspense. You write irresistible domestic nightmares, the celebrating your twists and turns, awarding you a starred review. I mean, you are a master of this.
Well,
so tell us tell us about that. Why don't you see yourself as a mystery writer?
A lot of the anxiety about genre is a uniquely writer's problem. Normal people don't obsess about what shelf the book is on, but we do. And, right after, do they have my book in the bookstore, comes, where is my book in the bookstore? Is it in the right place? And a lot of it goes back to I alluded to 2 novels that I'd written that were not published. And then after that, I made a pretty cut and dried decision. I was going to write a book somebody would publish. And that is why my first novel was a thriller. It was a legal thriller. And I was very conflicted about it. I even considered publishing it under a different name because I thought of myself as a literary writer. And, this was not my genre. I don't read mysteries. I don't read mostly thrillers. And I had a big problem, a practical problem, in that my publisher wanted me to write a sequel immediately and go sort of down that road. And I said no, because I wanted to be on the other side of the fence. But what I had learned was how much I love plot, and I love twists, I love surprises. So that is why I've been kind of dancing between genres for the rest of my career, which I think is probably a big part of the reason why I managed to get to 6 novels without anybody knowing who I was. I think, if you jump genres, people have a hard time sort of getting a fix on who you are and what you write. So it has been a long-standing problem of mine. It's been certainly an anxiety for me. I think that's the answer to your question.
Wow. Thank you so much. Because I think it's so fascinating that you have earned this incredible praise. This was not just randomly thrown at you. You have written work that has earned this incredible praise from all of these revered places. And I just think it's so interesting how we see ourselves and, how we identify ourselves and how others identify us. But, Jean, we all here in Mighty Place think you are absolutely incredible. You are ascendant, and your love of words and your love of the written word and your ability to tell such a efficient, concise, nuanced, complex, multi-layered, surprising story is unparalleled. I mean, you are absolutely amazing. So thank you so much for chatting with us. Thank you for your amazing books.
It's really interesting, and I really love your Christmas tree.
Thank you.
I have lights.
Thank you for suggesting that. So all of our Mighty Mystery fans know I'm usually in front of my bookshelf, but inspired by Jean's tree, I quickly dragged my desk over here. I had to figure out my lighting. I had to get up and change it in the middle of the show because I was overexposed. But I'm so glad I did, because now we could both be festive. Yay!
Yes.
Well, happy holidays to you and to all of everyone who joined us today. Thank you so much for your questions. Thank you for your presence. And Jean, we can't wait to have you back May 14th, hosted by the incredible Caroline Levitt, talking about your next book, earning even greater praise, The Plot.
I'm very happy with the book, and I hope people enjoy it.
I can't wait to read it.
Thank you, Sarah.
All right, everybody, have a great day. We'll see you next time.